If you are into e-commerce or you're running ads for an e-commerce business, you need to take your discounting strategy very seriously. And discounts can actually be applied in multiple ways. You can have discounts related to percentages, like a certain percentage off. It can be a flat percentage off. It could be uh, also related to the number of units sold. So if you buy a certain number of products, then you're going to get a certain percentage off. It could also be related to the bundles, for instance. So if you have product bundles created, then you're going to get discounts over the total uh, value of products if bought individually. So there are multiple ways you can have discounts, but it's not very easy to come up with discounts which actually work. And here's why: because discounts are actually related, or they are dependent on number of factors, and they're going to have an impact also on a lot of factors depending on the circumstances or the conditions within which they are applied. So you can't apply discounts without without thinking, and it's not a guarantee that if you just give a discount that you're going to have a better outcome, because without even going very deep, you can understand the discount will have actually two kinds of effects. So one will be a downward push on the overall AOV, or the revenue per transaction, because your average order value is going down per transaction. So the revenue will have a downward push. On the other hand, your sales volume, or sales velocity, is also going to have an upward push, because because people will be willing to buy a lesser price product because of the discount. So this it ultimately boils down to the final combination between these two things, and whether or not the outcome is actually a positive one, based on the aggregate effect of these two contradictory and contradictory things which are moving in opposite directions. So the discounting strategy is complicated. It's dependent on AOV. It's dependent on seasonality, because AOV is going to be different. Conversion rates are going to be different depending on any special seasonal factors, and then it's also dependent on consumer choice. And this is something that we often miss. Consumers are not willing to pay anything that you just ask them to pay. They are going to have a certain perspective in mind, that they're going to have. They're going to think that, okay, this is the amount that I am willing to pay for a particular product, and not more, and not even less also, in a sense. Although they might be willing to pay discounts, but they might be willing to buy when there are discounts. But if it's too less, then also it creates a certain doubt in the customer's mind about the quality. So it's very important to understand what is that optimal level of pricing, which is in line with what your target customers, your desirable set of customers, will actually have in mind regarding your product. So your product valuation is something that has to be done correctly. And this is a very obviously advanced or mature thing that I'm talking about. So not every product, not every brand will be able to do this. But if you are working with a business which has the capability of carrying out detailed customer or market research surveys, wherein they can understand from the customers whether or not they think that the pricing is correct, or what the pricing should be, if they've found out, or if they've figured out this information through research, then it's this is going to be much easier for them. So you're looking here at a template, a Google Sheet template. I'm just going to jump into this now, into the practical side of it, and you're going to see here that there's a lot of data which is for a furniture business, and we have three kinds of single products here, which are chair, table, and monitor stand. And we also have the double bundles and the triple bundles. So we only have one triple bundle here, because then all the three products together, and then we have a couple of bundles here: chair and table, and monitor stand, and chair, right? So we have so we have three combinations, actually three double bundles: so chair and table, chair and monitor stand, and table and monitor stand. So what you see here in front of you, so I'll just jump into this section first, because this is the real data that you have actually obtained, the business would have obtained from customer survey. So for each customer ID, obviously there's one customer ID for each customer, so it's a unique number per customer, and for each of them they have reported what they think is the or what their perceived value of the right pricing for each product is. So this is obviously the outcome of some sort of market research survey. So this particular customer, for instance, thinks that 185, whatever is the unit here, so dollars, for instance, $185 should be the value of the chair. $833 should be the value of the table. I mean, they're comfortable at that price and they think it's a fair price. And monitor stand should be about $100. So for them, if the pricing of the product of the chair, for instance, so you have to look at it this way. So chair corresponds to this one, chair table to 2, and this one for 7 to 7, for instance. So when you actually look at this sort of in this sort of fashion, so you have if you have the pricing for the chair set at $500, then you have the customer actually paying $315 more than what they perceive to be a fair price, meaning that this is actually, so this is not a fair deal for them because they think that this is overpriced. So this is all about whether or not the customer is feeling like they have some sort of a surplus, right? So whether they're generating any value out of it. And so the customer thinks that 833 could be the value of the table. So they think that, okay, so I have actually got a surplus of $333 in terms of the value added by the product. So this is how it's being calculated. So this is the price that has been set at initially. So do try to understand what we're trying to get at. We're trying to get at what should be the discount. Okay, I'm going to come to a couple of variables with which it is going to be linked. So this is going to be a fairly mathematical process. Let me say that at the onset. There's going to be a bit of formula involved in it, and there's going to be also a little bit of algorithm involved towards the end. But what I'm trying to get at is this starts all with the customer perception of what the ideal pricing should be. So we calculate the differences here between what the customer perceives as the fair price for each of the customers here and what has been set as the right pricing. So by the way, this model obviously changes whenever I change any value, for instance. So as you can see here, that quite a few values will change here. So it's dependent, obviously, and a lot of the things are working together and in tandem here. So when we jump into the bundles now, so let me explain how the bundle is really working. So here, obviously, when we are calculating the difference, so we are obviously taking the total value from the perceived values by the customer. So if it's chair plus table, so we are taking the sum of the two perceived fair values for the two products in question, chair and table, as reported by the customer, and we are obviously deducting it from the bundle pricing that we have set initially. So this is going to be 185 plus 833 minus the bundle price here, and as you can see, that comes out to be 218. All right, so that's the surplus value. That's the advantage. That's the sort of the profit that the customer is going to make in his mind, or in his or her mind, when they buy this product, because they had valued it more. They were willing to pay more, $218 more, in fact, to be specific in this case, than what the actual pricing was. So this is something. So now what we're going to do is we're going to calculate it for each of these customers, for each of these instances of the 3 single products, the 3 double bundles, and 1 triple bundle. We're going to find out the surpluses, which can be positive or negative, as you can understand, if depending on what the pricing is and what the difference is between the pricing and the perceived prices, the perceived value in the customer's mind. And then we're going to calculate the maximum surplus. The maximum surplus is simply the maximum of all these values. And this is going to be the deciding factor as to what the customer is most likely to purchase, actually. So they will obviously purchase the one which will give them, in their mind, the highest perceived value or the highest surplus. So the max surplus is the one, is the value that the customer is going to get in their mind. And this is the one which they're going to make a purchase of, which we calculate in this particular column here, which option is bought, if any. And as you can see here, 383 is the maximum one, and all this calculates here, as you can see in this formula. This is just a match formula to try and understand, okay, so if this is the one that's the maximum surplus, let's understand which column does it correspond to. So it corresponds to this one, and if you just look at it here, if you go straight up, we see that it's this is the table plus monitor stand. Yeah, so that's it. That's the option. So this is the 6th option here, which has been bought. And if we know that it's the 6th option, then we also know what could be the total revenue. So what is the total revenue? The total revenue is going to be the actual price of the product that has been sold. So in this case, it's the double bundle, right? So the double bundle is $550. So that's why, because it corresponds to this particular column, the sixth one, and that's the pricing option there. So $550 is the revenue. And when we have the revenue, then we move to the profit. So what is the profit? So you can see here there's a lot of negative profits here that I can see, right? So what is the profit? Okay, the profit is simply going to be, we're going to take this profit as we're going to subtract from this one, and then we're going to look at okay, what's the index of this particular value, M8. All right. So what is the, where uh, in here do we get this particular value? So we get this particular value here. So we are looking at the variable costs here, basically. Okay, so as you can see here, so it's E5 to K5, which is this particular section, and this is where we get the variable cost. So this is of course something that comes from the brand, from the business, and when we have this value, we can calculate the profit. So there's a lot of negative profit here, as you can see, right? So quite a lot of negative profit. Let me just do a quick summation of this. Yeah, so this is actually given in absolute terms, so it's actually a loss. Okay, so when we have this is an accounting convention. When we have a negative value, we actually have this in first brackets. So essentially, this is not profitable the way this has been set up, and as you can see, so this means that the way the pricing has been set up is not profitable, and we also have the discounting strategy for the bundles. So you can see here that the way the bundles pricing has been done is 20% here, and how this has been calculated is, it simply is E4 plus F4 minus H4, meaning that we have simply calculated the difference first in the numerator between the actual value of the total collective value of the single products, and then different, and then we subtracted it from the double bundles price, and then we just divided it by the sum of the single products price. So that's 20%. So 20% discount of the double bundle over the actual single bundles product. So you can see here 800 and 1000, so it's 20% discount. So that's how these discounts have been calculated for over the respective individual products, single products, and so this particular pricing strategy clearly has not yielded a profit. Okay, so what should be the correct pricing strategy? What should be the correct discounting strategy, which will obviously lead to our prices for the double bundles and triple bundles, which will give us the maximum profit. Certainly not negative profit, but the maximum profit possible within this particular setup. How do we get to that? This is where the math part comes in. This is not going to be easy. This is not difficult, but what I'm trying to say is not as easy as just coming up with a number by doing some easy calculations. So now we move to something a little bit towards modeling, and this is what we already had one part of the modeling, which is where we tried to incorporate the information from consumer perspective, what the consumer wanted. So consumer modeling has already been done. The process has started. So this is the second part of the stage where we have the model constraints. Okay, and before we move further, I'm just going to tell you that we're going to be using something called the solver. So that's within the data tab here within Excel. If you're using 2019 or 2016 and above, so you have the solver here, and the solver is essentially what going to help us do this. So the solver is basically a solver for optimization problems. So what we are doing here now is essentially an optimization problem, because we are trying to optimize profit on the basis of certain variables given some constraints. Okay, so that's how we basically define an optimization problem in language, in plain language. So these are our variables, which decision variables, in fact, so which are going to affect our total our outcome variable, or which is which ultimately decides the objective function, so to speak, in terms of in the mathematical parlance in the space that we're operating now, which is the optimization algorithm space. So maximizing profit is our objective function, and our decision variables are the pricing options that we have decided, and these are going to be subject to certain constraints. So what those constraints really are, so let's understand the constraints here. So there's going to be a maximum value for the pricing that we can set. The pricing is not going to be unrestricted. There's going to be a certain ceiling, a certain threshold. And how is that threshold going to be determined? Quite obviously, you might have already guessed. So each of these maximum values for the individual products, and then the double bundles, and then the triple bundle, is ultimately going to be determined by the maximum values for the maximum values from all across the from the entire data set of whatever the customers have said. So for instance, the maximum value, say, of a bundle, if you take a bundle here, which is a bundle chair plus table, as you can see, this will be R7 plus R8, and it's going to be the maximum value. So R7 plus R8, if I just jump into that, so R7 plus R8, we already have that actually. So you'll see that these are the values, which is the maximum table value and the maximum chair value. So these have given us the maximum values that the customers are willing to pay, and so this is basically the maximum of all these values across all customers. So that's the maximum. That's the data set we have, right? This is the input value. This is the best data that we have in terms of what the customers are willing to do in terms of paying. So clearly we have the numbers then in terms of the maximum prices, the threshold, upper ceiling, which we can set in terms of the pricing. Then we also have to go for we have to go a little bit deeper now. So there can be some price bundling conflicts. Okay, so what do we mean by this price bundling conflict? So this basically means that we can't also set the bundle prices without giving it a little bit deeper thought. So the price bundles, or the bundle prices rather, should be such that the bundle price should not be greater than the sum of the individual or the a la carte prices of the products, or the a la carte, the price of the a la carte products. So for instance, the chair plus table is $1,000. Now the bundle cannot be greater than or even equal to $1,000. Otherwise it wouldn't make sense, right? Because the customer is not going to get a discount. The whole point of making a bundle is to give a discount as opposed, compared to the situation where they have to buy and pay for each individual product. So that is a bundling conflict that we need to avoid. So the way this has been set up in this sheet is to give this value of 1 whenever there's a bundling conflict, and give this a value of 0 when there isn't one. So for instance, when the bundle price for the chair and table is actually less than table or not, if when this question has been raised, so there's an if statement going on here. You'll see when this is satisfied, it's 0, meaning that is a necessary condition which has been satisfied, which is fine, because the bundle price is less than the chair plus table bundle price is less than that of table. You have to check it for both of the cases, right? So for the chair as well as for the table. So chair plus table is greater than chair plus table, and it's also greater than each of the individual single products. So that's also very important. So the bundle price should actually be greater than each of the individual products as well, individual product prices. So bundle of chair and table should not be less than the individual price of either of these products, chair and table, right? So that has also been, these conditions have also been checked, and it has been either set to 0 or 1. So the objective here is that the total constraint that we actually have to put in the conditions in the solver, in the constraint section, is that this particular sum should be equal to 0, because if there's 1, it means that there's a problem and that needs to be resolved. So this is going to be 0 in the solver section. Okay, so now I'm going to jump into the solver and just going to show you. I'm not going to show you the execution because the actual execution does take a while. So this is our solver, And the solver here has a very simple setup. The solver is basically an Excel, magic. I'd say it's a fantastic piece of tool that gives you the power of running algorithms and running, you can say in a sense, automation. It's not exactly automation, but certainly the use of the power of using machine learning algorithm or advanced algorithms. In this case, optimization algorithms. So like I said in my discussion a little while back, that there's an objective function. So O17 is your profit. So there you go, O7 rather is your profit. So that's your profit, that's your objective function, and you want to maximize it, right? So you set it to max, and then you want to change the variables. So what are your decision variables? So I've already discussed that. Your decision variables are E4 to K4, your pricing options. And then, so I obviously made a mistake here, so I'll just change that because, yeah, so this is going to be the profit, although I'm not going to run it, but just don't want to show you the wrong thing. So your objective function is set to maximize profit. You change your variables, your prices for individual or single products as well as bundles, and then you set certain constraints here. And the constraints will simply be the ones that I just discussed. So the bundle prices should not be greater than the sum of the prices of each individual product, and they should not also be less than each of the individual or a la carte products prices. So this is the set of constraints that we are essentially looking at. And once we have provided all the constraints, and also this particular sum should be 0, which is basically going to take care of all these constraints. Once this has been run, and by the way, we have to choose an evolutionary algorithm here because we don't have a simple linear algorithm that's going to work very well. So this is our evolutionary algorithm, and you can jump into options here and you can take a look at some of the options that you have. So as you can see here, you can have constant precision, you can have the maximum time. So 360 seconds, as you can understand, is 6 minutes. It's quite a long time, like I said. So we can't obviously give that much time, but I already have copy pasted what's going to be the output of the analysis, and we're going to have a look at that. Okay, so it's going to do 200 iterations. So try to understand what is going on here. For instance, when you are doing the evolutionary one, you have a population size of 200 and a random seed. Without going into the details of each of these, let me try and explain what's really going on. It's essentially going to try and find out what is the best combination of the prices subject to the constraints that we have given that will also maximize the profit. That's what's going to try to do. So it's going to try 200 times, because 200 iterations are going to be there in this execution. 200 times it's going to try out different values or inputs of prices, and then it's going to find out what is the most optimal solution, the optimal pricing distribution that is going to give you the maximum profit. So that's what this algorithm is going to do. So this is the optimization problem, and I'm going to give you the comparison now. So when there is no bundle pricing, what the estimated profit is looking like. So with bundle optimal pricing, has clearly, as you can see, the profit is clearly greater. All right, so it's $115,000 and it's $100,000 and $177 when without pricing, without bundle pricing. And you can see that the individual or the a la carte pricing has also changed. And very interestingly, you can actually have a very different combination here. So 506, 721, and 100. And you can see that when you have with bundles, you sometimes have to raise and sometimes have to decrease the prices. In this case, the prices have actually increased, all right, because you're going to give discounts, right? So what the algorithm has found out, that you actually have to increase the individual products prices, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because you're already going to give a discount on that, and people are going to be more likely to buy your bundles because that's going to increase the revenue compared to each of the individual cases, and but it's also going to give enough incentive to people to buy, because the individual prices have increased, as you can see, compared to the previous case. So these are then the bundled prices, and again you can actually check go back and check my previous that previous section where I talked about the constraints, that all the constraints are being met. 1191, for instance, is certainly lesser than 1488. And that's supposed to be the case, right? Like I said, the bundle price should be lesser than the bundle than the sum of the individual or the a la carte product prices, and that's going to be the case for each of these. And then you have the correct combination of prices, and once you go ahead and do that, and you can also calculate the discount prices easily from here, right? Because you can take the sum of these two. So for instance, you can just take the sum of these two. Second. So the sum of these two, and then you can just take the difference, and then you can just divide it by this. To get the discount. So there you go. That's essentially the discount that's there. It's around 20%. And because this discount is there, you can see that the prices have been increased compared to the situation where there were no bundles, and therefore no discounts based on bundles. So of course, again, this is not something that you can do manually. So you have a very elaborate system here, very nice template, and following this template, you can actually come up with this situation where you can have a very optimal set of discounting and optimal set of bundle pricing. So I hope this was helpful to all of you. And this template is for free. I can share it, and this was inspired by university professors' work. So it's very neatly done, very well executed, and of course, like I said, this does start with a very detailed market research survey. Without that, this would not have been possible. So you need to have that kind of data where you can start with information about what the customer perception is about the pricing of the products. Once you have that, the rest of it just kind of falls in place once you use this template. And yeah, if you have any difficulty understanding it, or if you need any help executing it or running it, implementing it, especially the solver part, and what algorithms you need to choose, those are things which are important. They have important ramifications, so important considerations are there. So yeah, I'm open to discussions, but this was the overall idea, and I hope this was useful. It should be useful to anyone running ads for e-commerce businesses, because discounting is such a central part of the overall decision mix. So thanks for watching. Do like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.